Let's talk a little bit about RPG experiences. We both have, of course, RPG experiences, but I know, Dave, that you are Call of Cthulhu game master, and maybe you could tell a couple of words. How do you prepare the adventure, and how you lead your players through the adventure to keep still this Lovecraftian and cosmic horror uh, tension?
Right. Well, I should say I don't really run Call of Cthulhu in that I have played it a couple of times, but we would usually use other systems, maybe Cthulhu Dark and but mostly GURPS actually when I've been running Lovecraftian games. I I kind of don't start with the idea it's going to be Cthulhu mythos because it would be very tedious if it's always, investigating Nyarlathotep or Yog Sothoth or whatever. So I just think it's modern science fiction. Uh, there's nothing supernatural. There are these entities like the Migo or whatever, but they might not show up, and the players don't shouldn't turn up thinking we there'll be a cultist and we will eventually deal with or be destroyed by Cthulhu. Um, in fact, I'd keep those huge entities off screen because they're unkillable by any mortal means. So um, you can have cultists, and I have had that where, and of course, they know nothing about Cthulhu or Yog Sothoth. What they really want. These are deluded human beings who have got the idea that there's some secret ritual that will give them some special gift, but it's just like any bit of nonsensical magic. They think that they're worshipping Cthulhu, and Cthulhu doesn't even know they exist and doesn't care. We just eat them like everybody else. So, but that can human beings, I think, are always the most interesting adversaries for players anyway. So, typically, I'll have some horrible mystery at the heart of it. Whispers in Darkness is a great sort of um, template for that because there's a kind of dread they're investigating, but they also kind of don't really want to face the truth. Um, and like all good role playing, I think you depend on your players. They're going to act in character, and the you can't predict what they're going to do. And I'm often delighted but astonished by their behavior. Um, their idea of morality, for example, they're supposed to be the good guys, but they will sometimes try to murder the people they think are the bad guys, which would be things where I would think, well, you know, when you hunt monsters, you can become a monster, but I don't know whether the players realize that they have become extremely corrupted by what they think is doing good. Um, and there's also that question. I mean, because of Call of Cthulhu, particularly, sanity is another stat, as it were, which is kind of like not how it should be dealt with. Because I think, first of all, mental health is a much more serious issue than just a number. You don't just go mad or sane. People can be perfectly sane in many ways and then have some strange little delusion. Even I touch wood and I have absolutely no superstitious feelings at all. But if I'll tap wood and think of Odin for some reason, if something's going wrong. So um, I think with sanity, I would address that with not just a number, but rather like we were talking about how hit points should be qualitative and part of the story. When the players are facing awful things, I don't just say you've gone crazy. I wait to see how they behave. Typically, they know that part of their character portrayal will be an uncertain grip on reality, and then events that mirror their fears can be I can put into the game and accentuate those areas. But I think it's always a fine line with role playing. You want to improv, but you don't want players to come out of character and start thinking like writers, because you'll just get a very boring kind of straitjacketed story then. You want them to stay in character, but a character who understands that world And clearly at the back of their mind there is the player, but and the player will be aware of playing to the setting they're in. Um, it's a kind of it's a black art, and when it works, I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm kind of opposed, I must say, to what's nowadays called narrative games because I think they suck all the real fun out of role playing, which is to throw yourself in without a safety net. And I think a lot of narrative games are really about not wanting us grown-ups to do make believe the way a kid would. But I think, no, get back to what a kid would feel, which is 100% commitment and be in character. And that's, I think that's the secret to these things. If the players are willing to just throw themselves into the story. So I don't really think I do very much. We've had great games, but when I'm running them or if somebody else is running them, it's really a group team effort. Um,
Mhm. And I think you made two interesting points here. One is this sanity metrics, where in gamebook it is difficult to address, but it is much more convenient for game master to address the reality description to the players considering their sanity level, right? So once the sanity goes down, you may loom the story much more different, right? If they would be fully rooted in the reality. So it is much more easier running the campaign than writing the book. This is one idea,
mm,
one topic, and the second is very interesting what you mentioned about. The game book author or book author and being at the same time game master. This is also very interesting because lately I met two professional Polish authors who are writing science fiction and fantasy for 30 years, I believe. And and I asked them about playing RPG, and they both said, "Oh, I'm not very interested in that. I don't like playing RPGs, right?"
mhm.
And they did, but they did not explain it very precisely. But I believe that this is such kind of mechanism that when you are an author and you create the story, you have very particular message and the control over the world, over the characters, over the story, and you really would like to have a full control on that. While when you drive the sessions, then you need to give a space to the players, right? And you need
Yeah,
to be on the same level of participation as them, even
actually,
maybe on the lower level of
yeah. And
participation, right? Which
as
may be very difficult for professional author.
I don't know because I work as an author and a game designer, and you have to be completely on in control then. But I actually think of role playing as my relaxation. I don't have to author everything. And it's all about letting go of that control. And I enjoy that because I think, okay, if this were a story, I'd have it go, but this will entertain me more if I see what the players do. And I think, I didn't see that coming at all. And they will astonish me. And I think that will be a better story typically than the one I would have invented for myself. But I think if an author is going to treat it, um, if they can't give up control, well, that's a shame because quite often, even when you're writing fiction, you find that characters don't want to do what you think you wanted them to do. So this is just that same feeling of the characters taking. Stephen King talks about that. The characters will take over, and this is a case where the characters really take over because they're played by somebody else. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, I think some authors maybe would enjoy role playing, but some just obviously want to be authors the whole time. Uh, so yeah.
Yeah, there are probably different kind of authors. As far as I know, Andrzej Sapkowski, he also has this attitude, right, that he does not to play the role-playing games
Uh,
very much. But this is probably the character and the attitude, right, of the particular person.
I did
And
see.
as you said, Stephen King, I remember his book, How to Write.
Yeah.
and he described his creation process, and he said that first he creates the characters and then he let them act, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's not planning the special plot, right?
yeah.
Or he just, let them act and they are doing what what they want.
Yeah, well, he probably wouldn't run a role playing game because he doesn't need to. That is the way he's writing the whole time. Um, but I think there are um, there probably would be people who could run a game the way you would author a book, but I think that would be a terrible game to play in because you would effectively just be told a story by the GM and you wouldn't have any real freedom, and that would be awful. I want my players to feel like if they want to abandon the plot they think is there and go do something completely different, that the world will just happen in front of them, and a story will evolve wherever they are. And that's the best kind of role playing, I think. But of course, it's very, very different from crafting an exact story with a particular theme. I don't even know what the theme, if a theme even means anything. And of course, the theme will be different for each player character. The We used to get into a thing of often doing a write up after the game, and write ups of games can be very boring if they just list everything that happened. We did this, we did this. But as long as they're written in character, you realize that they're unreliable narrators and everybody has a different take on what was actually important and what needs to be done and what they did. And then um, they become stories, but two different players' write-ups are completely different. And that's what I find interesting too. It's like reality. You get, Rashomon. You have an actual reality, but then everybody's take on it is something else.